Welcome back to Best of Trek, Worst of Trek, the show where I rank all live-action episodes of Star Trek. I'm your host, Dustin Wing. Being tested at 452, 4 aliens in search of an exit, or Allegiance. An episode where I love half the plot and hate the other. When Picard wakes up with what's eventually 3 other prisoners in a sealed room, he spends the runtime trying to keep the others from fighting and devise who has captured them. It puts Picard into the plot of one of my favorite Twilight Zone episodes, 5 characters in search of an exit. Patrick Stewart does a great job figuring out which of the other prisoners is actually their captor. Meanwhile, it's simultaneously Picard on the Enterprise that makes me want to toss the rest of the filler plot in the garbage, where Picard is replaced with an imposter and sees if the crew will follow him to death for no reason at all. Thankfully, Riker's smart enough to take control of the ship. The mediocre classic An Alien Race Tests Humanity Trek trope. Looking at our first 3-parter on the list at numbers 451, 450, and 449. Data's great-grandpa. Or The Augments, Cold Station 12, and Borderlands. Some parts of this 3-parter really work, and a lot of it is just filler and fan service trying to make use of a Season 4 cut episode budget by double and tripling up on episodes. In general, it works well for the season, but this is one where the plot is stretched thin, in what could have been done in 1 or 2 parts at most. When once frozen genetically modified embryos are stolen and raised by Data's great-grandfather, Enterprise finally has something to do after its refit, when the augmented humans attack and take over a Klingon ship. The augments themselves are the biggest problem with the story. The ties back to Khan feel cool, but these over-the-top refugees of the 1980s Road Warrior cast take every chance to pull us into a psychosexual daytime TV drama every scene they're in. Soon sets a trap for Enterprise so their crew will get kidnapped and sold in an Orion slave market. Honestly, this diversion that is pure filler for the 3-episode run is one of the best parts. After Archer recovers his crew, the augments steal Soong from them, and the next 2 episodes are a game of cat and mouse that involve biological weapons and one of the more gruesome deaths we'd ever seen in Trek. At least we got to see recurring Trek actor Richard Reel to put a face on Dr. Lucas Phlox has been name-dropping for 4 seasons. By the start of the 3rd episode, Archer takes a spacewalk without a spacesuit and gets retrieved just in time. Even Soong realizes the augments might have been a bad idea and helps Enterprise take out the remaining augments. Just when you think the episode is heading for a satisfying conclusion, the final augment comes out of nowhere on Enterprise to attack Archer and Soong. This one had a lot of promise, and it was really nice to see Brent Spiner in one of many Data's relative roles. Maybe actually the best one he's played so far. But 3 episodes to tell this soap opera were too many. It was nominated for an Emmy for stunt coordination. At least at the end, it ties us directly into Soong starting on positronics, rather than biological augmentation laying the groundwork for one of his descendants to make Data. Spinning a web of lies at 448, Dissemble. Or Vortex. Always nice to start an episode with an exchange between Odo and Quark. Odo sniffs out that Quark has some kind of scheme going on, and sneaks into the meeting, where a stolen object is being negotiated, and an alien from the other side of the wormhole storms in, kills one of the sellers before Odo can take control of the situation. This guy gets Odo to believe that he knows about changelings, and his story about there once being shapeshifters on his world, but then being persecuted into leaving, sounds like his may have been the original planet of the Founders. Odo is ordered to take him back to his planet Rakar for crimes he already committed on that world. While that whole story plays him up to be a lying thief and killer, it turns out what he's wanted all along is to free his daughter from a stasis pod on a planetoid in some kind of vortex. If the effects of the vortex look familiar, That's because it's the Mutara Nebula from Wrath of Khan, recolored and flipped upside down. One of the better episodes of DS9's first season. Holding a Time Lord at 447, How Tragedy Shapes Us. Or Perpetual Infinity. We open to finally seeing the backstory of Burnham's parents' fate at the hands of the Klingons that's been talked about since the first episode. This becomes important when she finds out that her mom escaped in the first Red Angel suit and the Klingons attacked to get back a time crystal Section 31 stole. Her mom doesn't want to see her, but she forces the issue and her mom's all like, tough love. She tells her about her adventures into the desolate future where Control destroyed everything once it got its hands on the sphere data in Discovery's computer. This is decent setup for the final episodes of the season, but there's some unbelievable things, like Tyler getting stabbed by Leland and somehow making it to an escape pod. Did he retain Voke's redundant heart? The dynamic between Burnham and her mom couldn't start off any worse. Having a near-death experience at 446? Devil's in the details. Or Coda. The first bits of the episode are a time loop of Chakotay and Janeway in a shuttle, where Kathy dies a few times and they end up back in the shuttle, but realize they're in a loop. Side note, why are the captain and commander doing what appears to be a mapping survey? That's a lower decks job. Anyway, Janeway eventually dies and is trying to be convinced by a figment of her father to let go of the physical world and join him and some kind of afterlife. In the end, it's really some kind of entity that feeds on souls trying to get her to surrender herself, because apparently there's rules to his soul harvesting. This episode is quite an intriguing look into the idea of an afterlife, but it drags everything out and feels like they only added 4 time loops because the show was too short. Overall, an interesting watch, though. Making first contact with a primitive civilization at 445? Indigenous Protections. Or Natural Law. Chakotay destroys another shuttle while investigating a force field covered area on a planet Voyager is participating in a conference at. He and Seven end up inside the barrier and find a primitive culture who have been protected from the outside world by a force field erected by an unknown race to keep them safe from the more materialistic modern civilization on the planet. In getting out, they bring down the force field and let in the very people that weren't supposed to be there. Chakotay realizes they must put the barrier back up for the sake of these people. The civilization that rolls in is eerily reminiscent of colonial armies driving Native Americans from their land. Seven gets some more late-in-the-game character development by not caring about the primitive culture, and then being a Greenpeace activist by the end. There's also a throwaway B-plot about Paris having to take piloting lessons for running a stop sign or something. Decent outing, and a slightly less culturally appropriating episode than TOS Paradise Syndrome. Taking the kids on a cross-country journey at 444? Trek Vacation. Or Good Shepherd. We start by playing a game of Follow the Pad, where we see the chain of events when someone on the bridge says they need to increase power to something, getting handed down the chain of command all the way to the lowest of the lower decks. The intro kicks off with a camera flying in on Janeway in her ready room, and closes by flying away from a small viewport on Deck 15. It's down here in Voyager's greatest numbered deck where we find guitarist of Rage Against the Machine Tom Morello, one of my favorite bands of the 90s. The episode itself has overtones of the episode of TNG Lower Decks, and even more so shows us a motley group of Starfleet personnel that probably would have washed out in the Alpha Quadrant. Janeway takes her underdeveloped crew on a survey mission aboard the Delta Flyer. What they experience is both interesting and literally nothing at the same time. The flyer is attacked by some kind of dark matter life forms we can't see in space, but end up going full invasion of the body snatchers on the hypochondriac of the group. The experience seems to have been an overall success, as these wayward crew members have a new sense of teamwork, all because of Janeway. Taking the psych test at 443? Trials. Or Coming of Age. Look at you, Season 1 TNG, hanging out up here with the almost cool kids on the list. Wesley takes an early entrance exam for Starfleet Academy, while the Enterprise undergoes a formal inspection ordered by Admiral Quinn, who's said to be one of Picard's best friends. It seems this is the setup for possibly the worst payoff in Trek history in Conspiracy, that's currently ranked 696 on this list. For Season 1, the setup here, questioning all the senior officers, is really well done. Meanwhile, Wesley is placed in the beige world of the back rooms and forced to face his darkest fear: not being able to make a literal life-or-death choice in a critical moment. Considering how annoying his character can be written through Season 1, this is one of the nicest looks at Wesley Crusher. Worf is written quite well in this one also. I've always thought Worf's character lost a kind of spark after Season 1.
Ah, computer.
That program is available.
Thanks, Major. Major. Thanks, Major.
Pursuing vessel approaching from 181, Mark 12.
Thanks, Major.
Shields at 41%.
Major.
Thrusters engaged.
Thanks, Major.
Engines disengaged.
Thanks, Major.
Incoming subspace signal.
Thanks, Major.
Course laid in. Warning. Hydrazine gas leak.
Thanks, Major.
Hydrazine gas levels at 112 parts per million. That code is not recognized.
Thanks, Major.
Source unknown.
Major.
Warning. Structural failure in 30 seconds.
Thanks, Major.